People who worked or still work as a S worker, what was it like having your first client? Story 1. I was 19 when I was told I'd be escorting a woman to a wedding, no mention of banging, just a promise of a bonus from the woman who set up the date, if the woman I was escorting gave me a good review. The mark? A 32-year-old divorcee. Absolutely stunning. The wedding was for her ex-husband's sister, who also happened to be her best friend. I played my part through the ceremony where she pointed out her ex, skinny, short, and not an ounce of muscle. Basically the opposite of me. We went upstairs to change for the reception. That's when I learned what it would actually take to earn that bonus. She was loud, exaggerating, and screaming, likely because her ex was in the next room. But I played along. At the reception, we couldn't keep our hands off each other. Full-on PDA, non-stop. Back in the room later, we went at it all night. In between, she'd throw jabs at her ex, little digs that made it clear this was all one big sexy revenge plot. The next morning, she literally shoved me out the hotel room door, completely bare, just as her ex walked by. Judging by the look on his face, my manhood probably made an impression. Thankfully, there was a room service cart nearby. I used the house phone to call my handler and got driven back to her place. I got the bonus, sure, but I was low-key disappointed I didn't get to keep the tux or the suit. A week later, both were dropped off, freshly cleaned, along with an envelope containing $5,000 and a handwritten note that said, "You're a bargain," among other things. I was enchanted by her. Still kind of am. I wish I'd seen her again. Before we continue, do us a quick favor, smash that like button and subscribe to support our channel. Story 2. I was 18, fresh out of high school, and just trying to make some money for Christmas, but nowhere normal was hiring. That's how I ended up working at a parlor. I didn't realize at the time had a terrible reputation. It was known for gang-affiliated clients, and the whole setup was pretty sketchy. The owner would come by in the morning to collect her room fees for every 1-hour booking at $200. We kept $125 and $75 went to her for use of the room. Before leaving for the day, she'd do a quick vacuum and tidy up. After that, we were on our own. Whoever was working that day also had to act as the receptionist, answering the phones, doing the laundry, collecting money from clients, cleaning the rooms, and locking up at the end of the night. There was no security. It was run out of a regular residential house, from 10 in the morning to 11 at night. It was just us girls holding it down. My first client was an absolutely lovely older man, known by his regular visitor codename, Hot Rod. He was super gentle, took things really slow, and even tried to get me to the Big O before anything else happened. I was too nervous, bless him, but he genuinely tried his best. He went out of his way to make me feel comfortable and wanted me to actually enjoy myself, not just get through it. He tipped generously, treated me with kindness, and overall was just a really good guy. Honestly, I couldn't have asked for a better first client. The rest of that first shift, 10 clients over 10 hours, was a blur of back-to-back bookings. Most were all right, but a few were rough, pushy, and constantly trying to test boundaries. It's illegal to bang for money without a rubber or protective barrier, but completely legal or decriminalized, depending on where you are with protection, even for blowies. That didn't stop a lot of clients from trying to get around it. Most guys hated the idea of using rubber for BJs and would push hard to avoid it. Some tried to go over their book time, some got physically aggressive or too demanding. And then there was one man, probably in his 60s, Indian, who tipped me at least $500 to let me taste his smoothie. He knew I was fresh, knew I didn't yet have the backbone to say no at that point. At the time, I didn't know how to protect myself, how to assert boundaries or refuse when something felt wrong. I just wanted to survive the shift. I lasted about a week at that first place before I quit. I burned out fast. Having 8 to 12 clients a day was brutal, especially since everyone wanted to test ride the barely legal new girl. Thankfully, during university the following year, I found a much better parlor. It had an actual receptionist, and the owner stayed on site for the entire shift. Clients were properly vetted before they could book, and all the money exchanges happened in a real office with security cameras covering everything. I worked there for another 3 years before I retired when the business was sold. After that, I moved into a career working with animals, something I've always loved. I'm still friends with the old owner and most of the girls I worked with. Honestly, that second place gave me a sense of safety, structure, and community that I'll always be grateful for. Story 3. I wouldn't say I was an S-worker, but I've hoed a few times. The first time was purely just to say I had done it. I was 19 and went on Craigslist and answered a post from a guy asking for a 3-score with 2 women. We messaged back and forth for a while, but our schedules didn't line up right away. He had a woman text me to verify he wasn't a psycho and actually pays. He lived a bit away and I didn't drive, so he eventually ended up driving to my city, picking me up and getting a hotel. I brought a bottle of wine and some weed because I was nervous. We ended up talking for about an hour. Then we eventually moved on to the deed. He basically had a micro dong, and that was my first time ever seeing such a sight. But I keep it professional. At some point, probably because I was tipsy, I started making out with him. That caught him off guard. Anyway, we finished well, he finished, and I changed. He paid me and took me to a friend's house. I never met up with him again, but he did text me to ask about the kissing. He was so used to sleeping with working girls that had strict boundaries, rightfully so, that had never happened to him before. He then proceeded to text me for nearly 5 years after that to try to arrange a meetup. I figure I was more personable than other more experienced girls, and he liked it was more like a girlfriend experience. Story 4. I was absolutely terrified. I entered the industry for the first time as a mature woman, surrounded by young girls with long legs and perky titty bits. I had always been a very sexual person, so thought that I'd be like a fish to water. But I was not prepared for the emotional toll of trying to sell myself to every man that walked in. My first booking was a Colombian man in his early 30s, and it turned out he was high. I sucked and licked and rolled that popsicle for the whole hour and he couldn't even get his lil guy up. I thought it was me. I never doubted my skills but assumed he wasn't attracted enough to me. It was some of the more experienced girls who later explained about the drugs to me. 14 months later, I'm still in the industry and love it. The selling aspect has become so much easier. I make good money and meet some truly fabulous people. But whenever I get upset about missing a booking or not getting as many as I'd like to, I think about how excited I was the first time I was told that someone was paying to do it with me and the dread that immediately followed about what now, and I realized that a quiet day isn't so bad. Story 5. I was in my late 20s, broke, grieving, and on the edge. I just lost my job. One of my parents had passed away. I was about to be evicted, and my credit cards were maxed out. At the time, I knew a bunch of gay escorts and corn models, so stepping into that world didn't feel like such a leap. I mostly kept it to referrals. For a brief moment, I was even on Rent Boy. It was usually a case of someone needing a third for a 3-score, or a client hitting up one of my friends who couldn't make it, usually because they were out of town. So, by the time I did it on my own for the first time, I wasn't nervous, just ready. The first time I went alone was pretty fun, and it earned me some decent cash. He was late 50s, pretty good looking, but nothing crazy. He reached the finish line 6 times over, about 30 minutes, and I walked away with 4 figures. And when it was all over, we still hooked up afterward. I was on doxy prep, so I charged extra if someone wanted to skip protection. I don't do drugs myself, so things got a bit weird at times, but most clients didn't ask for that. I kept up with testing every 2 months, and health-wise, everything turned out fine. I met a few people, mostly professionals, who treated it as a convenience. Whenever I caught the smell of drugs or anything felt off, I just walked away. Story 6. I met him on Seeking Arrangement when I was 19. We grabbed a drink at a dive bar downtown, one I already knew well. Afterward, I gave him a blowy in the back seat of my car for $200. I'd banged plenty of times before, so I considered myself experienced, but this was my first time doing anything strictly transactional. That said, I'd worked a few shifts at dance clubs before, so I wasn't totally green when it came to taking money. And honestly, the money changed my life. I really needed it for a bill, and as soon as he finished, I drove straight to the bank to deposit it and get that bill paid. I didn't use a rubber, because I was being an idiot, let's be real. But yeah, that was my first time doing anything like that. Weirdly enough, he was actually kind of good looking. Chill too. But he never contacted me again. The guys on Seeking Arrangement can be super weird. I had all kinds of bizarre experiences with other men afterward, but out of all of them, he was probably one of the more normal ones. Story 7. It was a sugaring arrangement, and the guy told me it would be a threescore with a female bang buddy of his, someone he wanted to cheer up. When I got there, I met her first. She was really young, like 21, and I was 30 at the time. I usually don't hook up with anyone under 25. She looked anxious, shaking, pale, which felt off to me. When he showed up, he was cartoonishly ugly, nothing like his photos suggested. During the interaction, I realized she was getting paid too. He tried to lowball me on the price, and I had to firmly remind him of the original agreement. Honestly, I spent the whole time mentally focusing on her. I'm bi, and she was really pretty. I wanted to make the experience as positive as possible for her because she was straight and clearly nervous. At one point, she looked at me with this soft, almost amazed voice and said, "You said you're so beautiful." That was the only moment that felt a little sweet. I never saw him again. I ghosted him, but I did keep texting with her for a while. We planned to meet for coffee, but it never happened. She told me she didn't like doing it and that the guy made her uncomfortable, but she needed the money for her kid. That really hit me hard. I told her not to use her real phone number and to be careful and safe. I still think about her sometimes and hope she's doing okay. She didn't reply the last time I reached out, so I don't want to bother her or remind her if she's moved on from that life. Story 8. I worked at a massage parlor that was financed by Happy Endings. I was only 18, and I had never given a hand J before because I was anxious about being judged for not being good at it. My self-esteem was practically non-existent, and now I understand I was dealing with body dysmorphia. He was a Caucasian man, probably in his mid-40s. I had never been bare in front of someone before, and I was convinced I was going to be body-shamed. I put a lot of effort into his massage, which I had also never given anyone before because I was terrified my hand relief wouldn't actually provide relief. He was incredibly kind, complimenting my physique immediately and repeatedly. He also praised my massage skills over and over. When happy ending o'clock struck midnight, he asked me to kneel over his face, something I had never done before. While I did my thing, the thing was a winner within a minute, and my fears were instantly defeated. Honestly, I'd say becoming an S-worker was one of the most healing and self-esteem building experiences I ever had, and I remember those days fondly. I was too timid to ask for compensation before the service, but luckily he was a kind and honest person. He even told me never to provide a service without being compensated in the future. A true canon event. Story 9. I'm technically in the industry. I work as a lingerie barmaid in Australia. My first day was terrifying. I'm confident and always wear tiny bikinis on the beach and post pretty revealing photos on my Instagram just for fun. But on the first day, I was shaking, kept fixing my outfit, just being awkward. I realized my job is less what I wear and the conversations I have. Don't get me wrong, I'm grateful to have a job with such good hourly rate, put me through a degree, but it's so emotionally exhausting. It's called surface acting in psychology, constantly being on and in a good mood, laughing at dumb jokes, smiling at creepy compliments and men double your age, drooling over you, barely looking into your eyes. The half-naked part is honestly the easiest part of it. It's the constant pretending and the character you put in that's exhausting. I've done it almost 3 years now, and now that I've graduated, I'm excited to move on to the next thing. I've heard the same experience from my dancer friends, dancing and being half-naked. You barely notice, but the emotional toll is heavy. But a lot of girls have funded buying a house, big travel or degrees, paid outright. I'm sure S-work is similar from what I hear from my friends. Story 10. Another former exotic dancer here. My first day was absolutely terrifying. I will say that I had really no idea what I was walking into. I saw an ad on Craigslist, sent in a bikini picture, smart, received an email from the owner, and went in that night. I thought I would just get some information and go from there. But they convinced me to do a short shift then and there when I had never done anything like that before. For that first time, I was given a little outfit, similar to a bikini for free, which I still have, and just sent out to watch what the other girls were doing. I remember that it was oddly early in the day, so there weren't a ton of people in the club, which was helpful, but I honestly had no idea what was going on. Pulled me aside and asked me what kind of music I liked, to which I answered rap, if you see what I look like lol, and he laughed at me. Then he asked me what I was going to go buy. Again, I was speechless, and one of the managers happened to be walking by, thankfully. He threw out Delilah, and She Was Born shortly after was my first time on stage, and because there were so few girls in the club, we were each doing 3 songs on top stage and 3 songs on bottom stage. The pole was intimidating. I could barely walk on heels, so I basically just rolled around on the stage, rubbing my chesticles. When I got to the bottom stage, one of the other girls took pity on me and came up to sit at the tip bar. If I remember correctly, she was my first customer. She leaned into me and instructed me to lean back onto the bar and bicycle my legs in the air while keeping eye contact as she tucked dollar bills in the waistband of my bottoms. She saved my life that night. If you're in here, I love you. When I went to the back rooms to give my first private dance, I was awkward as all hell. When you come back, you have to pay the bouncer $30 for one song, 20 of which went to me and 10 for the house, and I asked him about taking off my bottoms. I had seen several of the girls taking off their bottoms while they were dancing to reveal a sparkly or beautiful thong underneath, but I was bare under mine. I remember him staring at me, asking why I didn't have a thong on underneath, and me getting defensive because no one had told me or provided me with one. As the other dancer said, "It gets a lot easier. You start having to pay for everything, including outfits, working, and makeup." Luckily at my club, there was a house mom who took care of us. As someone told me soon after I started working, I did quickly become jaded, and it became second nature to just go sit on a random man or woman and disconnect from who I was entirely, which is a quiet, calm, not super social person. Story 11. I am a 28-year-old male and gay. When I was 19, I was stationed with the U.S. Air Force near Tokyo. One night at a local gay bar, I was basically recruited by a massage service that, well, expected a little extra beyond just massages. I was young, enlisted, and not making much money, so the cash they promised from clients sounded really tempting. My first night working was a Friday. After my shift, I dressed and headed to the massage parlor. Clients could either come into the shop or we'd get called out for hotel visits. They'd pick us either in person or through a website. That night, the boss man came in and told me I'd been reserved for a hotel meetup. I cleaned up, threw on something decent, and took the subway to the nearby hotel. My nerves were through the roof. My Japanese was pretty weak, and I felt like everyone in the lobby was staring right at me like they all knew exactly why I was there. I planned to take the elevator up to his room, but quickly realized I needed a key card to activate it. So, I had to awkwardly approach the front desk. They called upstairs, then scanned me in. During that short ride up, I almost bailed. I was about to do it with a total stranger. What if he wasn't attractive? What if he wanted things I didn't enjoy? I got to the room, and a well-dressed, decently fit man in his 40s answered the door. We barely spoke. Neither of us really knew each other's language. We showered, and then I gave him a bear massage until it was time. To my surprise, he wanted me to top. It hit me. I just assumed I'd always be on the bottom. I was a twinky young guy. Topping never even crossed my mind. So, yeah, it didn't go well. My guy couldn't stay up. The rubber was too small. The room was hot. He was very passive and didn't seem into it. We finished, and I couldn't have gotten out of there any faster. I didn't feel great about how it went, but it got easier over time. I kept doing it for the rest of my tour and ended up meeting a lot of really nice clients, mostly guys who seemed lonely or just wanted to avoid the hassle of dating apps. I topped way more than I normally would, but with practice, I got better at it. Story 12. I was about 20 or 21 at university and worked in a cafe ran by these 2 funny gay guys. They told me one day that they knew a lot of older women who were looking for some fun time and willing to pay for it. All I needed to do was turn up, be dressed nicely, have dinner and drinks, maybe take a river cruise through the city and back to their hotel for the said fun. This was before smartphones, so not once did I get a photo of these women beforehand, and I was always worried of what I was walking into and if I could perform. I only did it 5 to 10 times for money, and I was fortunate that every one of them wasn't completely unattractive, and they were all extremely nice and interesting to spend time with. The first one was a lady in her 50s who was career-driven and just kind of missed the boat for marriage and children. First impression, she looked like a cold corporate bish, but she was actually quite lovely and just lonely and wanted attention. We actually caught up again a few more times for no money, but she would always pay for everything. Story 13. I worked for an exotic dancer company that sent the dancers to private events and homes. Actual clubs were illegal in my city. I basically helped set up the events and stayed as security afterwards. In my time working for the company, I never saw a single woman do her first night sober. After they got comfortable, maybe 25% of the women could do it without being drunk or high. The rest had to do something to take the edge off. It was interesting because me and the DJ became unofficial trainers for the dancers. Since we'd watched so many girls at different events and saw what worked, we started giving new girls tips. Eventually, it became full-blown, where they'd do their whole set for us and we'd help refine it. One of the girls always gave me some of her tips because of the advice I gave her. I basically taught her to be patient and how to seduce and get the customer to pay her. The biggest tip was for her finishing move, though. Sorry to get graphic, but she would end her set by playing with a liquor bottle. You know, it would be empty. And afterwards, customers would always try to put it in their mouth, or at least smell it. I told her she should use a premium bottle, but fill it up with cheap liquor. Then charge customers for a shot after she plays with it. It sent her tips through the roof, and she became our top earner by far. Story 14. I was extremely nervous. I knew nothing about my client, and I was worried about whether or not she would enjoy herself. I arrived at the hotel and knocked on the specified door. She ended up being a perfectly average, middle-aged woman. I followed my instruction manual to the letter for all the introductory stuff. She warned me that she doesn't peak easily and requires a lot of warm-up. Long story short, I went to her downtown area for at least 40 minutes. She went from zero reaction to a muted one, but I didn't see anything that indicated she might have finished off. I raised the white flag after 40 minutes and apologized if I didn't get her off. She said, "Miter, are you kidding me? I got off like 5 times." She did end up repeating with me 2 more times and left some great reviews for me. She also gave me some insights about the industry. She was 10 out of 10 for a first customer. Edit for some of you asking, how do a guy get into this line of work? I was looking for something high-paying and kind of stumbled upon my shop's recruitment ad. I applied thinking nothing of it. I was surprised to be contacted regarding an interview. I live in Japan, so in my case I needed to have the right residence visa status, which I do. I was also fortunate to pick a shop willing to take a chance on me, as I think the majority of shops would not be open to allowing a foreigner to work for them. Even then, apparently most guys drop out after only a few months when they realize it isn't quite what they were dreaming of. Story 15. I didn't even realize what was happening until he paid me. I had snuck into the bike stop in Philly when I was maybe 18. This was back in 2002. Right away, older guys were buying me drinks and chatting me up. I was a chubby nerd, so all the attention was totally new and honestly kind of intoxicating. I ended up talking to this one guy for a while. He said he was a lawyer, and I was asking him all sorts of questions about his cases and stuff. Eventually, he looks at me and goes, "So, are we going home?" And I just said, "Yeah." "All right." We head back to his place, do our thing. It was fun. I hop in the shower for a bit, and when I come back out, dressed and ready to leave, he hands me $100 and says, with a wink, for the cab. Yeah, I went back the next week. I made so much cab money. Story 16. Does phone bang count? Many moons ago, there used to be phone numbers in little sleazy magazines with pictures of pretty girls and women saying, "Phone 18-year-old Missy now. Talk to 33-year-old Karen, the single mum now. 55-year-old Granny Rita is ready for your call now. Ring Gina, the transgender 24-year-old, for a chat." None of these people actually existed. All but one of us on the phone lines were ex-working girls. I was the exception. We signed into the phone system on our own home phone. We heard a code when calls were connected, and we then knew which character we were to play. We had to make the guy jump through some hoops before we could engage in naughty talk, as that is technically illegal in my country. I was terrified for the first call. I had no idea what to say, but got through it. The boss listened in. Funnily enough, I turned out to be exceptionally good at it. I bought some books on the psychology of intimacy and on intimate fantasies, and that helped. I was running the company and doing the phone system, rostering and checking on the girls' calls within a couple of months of starting. I was also making phenomenal money. We were paid by the minute. Later in my employment, I was offered a video slot when they began doing video calls. I left the company. I was fine being an anonymous, never-to-be-found voice on a phone line, but no way was I going to do video. I was about 45 at the time. Shortly after leaving that job, I ended up working in an adult store for a while. I loved that. So many quirky, wonderful customers. I then thought a change of pace would be great and applied for a job at a red light area as the desk girl. No banging. I did one night and discovered that it was not the job for me. Too much drugs on the premises for my liking. I didn't want to get caught up in raids. It was eye-opening, though, to see the girls arriving for work, looking like anyone on the streets, and after hair and makeup, looking like totally different people. The customers were funny, too, especially the couple of guys who asked if I was available. Told them I was too busy being a desk jockey to be a dong jockey. Story 17. Former of girl. I'm well educated, but I'm from a poor country and I'm a breadwinner. I was so lucky. My first client was a sweet man, a widower. He just wanted company and some playtime. Second client, I was even luckier. She was a lovely woman, just lonely. Her first time ever on OEV. Met trying it out. Everyone else after were pigs. I really felt like an object. I was dissociating a lot, hated my body, but I stayed on for the money to pay for school masters, mind you, and my parents' hospital bills. Until my second client, the woman whom I had gotten close to, offered me a large sum so I could leave the business and focus on finishing my degree and getting another job where I was safer. So I stopped. We kept in touch, got even closer, fell in love. We're dating now. I'm in a good job, and I graduated. It's been 2 years now, happy and safe. Story 18. I did a solo for about 3 months, just as an experiment. I made over $1,000, which I think is pretty decent for a guy, but honestly, I felt kind of empty by the end of it. My very first subscriber came in hot with a bunch of requests, and I gave in. I probably sat there texting back and forth for an hour, riding this huge wave of dopamine from landing my first sub. But then it hit me. I just spent an hour of my life for $4. That high wore off fast. At one point, I had someone subscribe to me who was actually running for a government position in their state. They even gave me some tips. Eventually, they deactivated their account. But yeah, wild. At my peak, I was in the top 15% of all creators. I mostly did it to see how I do, but I can't lie. The money and the need for some kind of validation played a part too. I made sure to stay anonymous and kept my face hidden the whole time. Could I start posting again? Sure, but honestly, dealing with the clientele just isn't for me, especially the messaging. That part drains me. I'm a straight guy, but every single one of my subscribers was male. I did get a few offers to collab with female S-workers, but man, I'm just lazy, and I know I'd feel empty afterwards. Story 19. My first client was a prominent Canadian businessman, and I was a college student in my 20s, living in Indiana. He was married and used a fake name, but I eventually figured out who he really was. We saw each other a few times whenever he was in town. He was kind, generous, and had this thing about playing the role of a mysterious benefactor. He also had a pretty weird breeding thing, but overall, he was a lovely man. Years later, he died of cancer. They named a big plaza after him. Every now and then, I'll see it mentioned somewhere, and just think, huh, that was a weird time. Story 20. I was pressured by my then-husband of all people to become a sugar baby at the ripe age of 38. I went on my first sugar date, and I instantly clicked. Over the course of a year, we fell in love, and now we're in it for life. Honestly, I think I won the sugar life lottery. Edit. The first date was incredibly hard. I actually called him and told him I couldn't go through with it, but he convinced me to at least go for dinner. It was a nice restaurant. High-end, but not snooty. We had the most lovely time. He mostly asked me questions about myself. I followed suit and asked about his life a lot, but he was cryptic. At the end of the date, he didn't even touch me, attempt a hug or a kiss. He walked me to my car, opened the car door for me, and asked me to drive safe. He then said he said'll send me the last name, and to look him up online. Oh, okay. Story 21. I only tried it twice, but it was just too weird, so I stopped. The first time was with an older man. I showed up on time, but he was still finishing his salad, so I just sat there at his dinner table, awkwardly twiddling my thumbs while he chewed in silence. Honestly, one of the longest, most awkward 10 minutes of my life. Eventually, we went to the bedroom. He got undressed and laid face down on the bed. I offered a brief massage, but he was so frail I was genuinely afraid I might hurt him. Then he turned over, and I started playing with him a bit. He said he liked it but couldn't get his lil guy up because he'd already done once that day. So, I stepped it up and started giving him a blowy. He was into it, very vocal, but still couldn't get up. I get that he was older, and maybe it was a physical thing, but yeah, it still took a little jab at my self-esteem. Second time, with a different guy, not that anyone asked, was just as weird in its own way. After some cuddling, he told me all he really wanted was to do it in my mouth. So, I got ready, while he stood there soloing. I had no sense of how close he was, so I just stayed there, feeling kind of dumb and awkward, waiting. Then, right before he was done, he grabbed my face with one hand and shoved the dong in, and I reached the peak too. It was the first time I'd ever let someone do that, and also my first big O without anyone touching me at all. I think it was the anticipation, or maybe the sheer intensity of doing something I'd always been too repressed to imagine. Either way, it was weirdly thrilling and kinda unforgettable. I remember lowering my head after to catch my breath and let everything drip out. I had explained earlier that I felt ashamed doing this kind of work, so he thought I was crying, awkward, as he stroked my hair telling me it's okay. Anyway, that's me. Story 22. When I was young, I used to bang around for money. I lost my V-card to my stepdad, so the stage had been set for just no self-respect. It happened organically. A guy I was talking to asked, and so I was like, what the hell? Feelings? It hurt. I was kinda scared, just like I remembered it before, except I was self-conscious, because I was more self-aware in my teens. Transactional. It wasn't hot in my opinion, but he kept calling. I didn't care for it, but I liked the extra cash. Physical intimacy was always transactional for me, either to gain something like money, attention, or revenge. It wasn't until much later in life that I started having intimate relations because I desired it. Mine almost 30 now, and I haven't messed around for money since I was 18. Story 23. My first night as a cocktail waitress at the men's club, I made $550 in 5 hours on a Tuesday night. One Saturday night, during a PPV event, I made over $1,800 in about 7 hours. As a waitress, I never had to dance, just uniform of Corvette, microskirt, fishnets, and of course heels. I became lead waitress after 6 weeks or so, as well as bartender, eventually moved to assistant manager and then club manager after about 2 years. I also was office manager for a construction company during the day but quit once I took over as the club manager. I also eventually took over as club manager for the Dallas and Houston locations before becoming COO of all 3 locations. I left that position 14 years ago to start a career with a major sports broadcasting company, having built a network of contacts through my time with this industry. So safe to say that first client led to some good things for me. Story 24. I was a 22-year-old crossdresser at the time, and I found a guy, let's call him Kevin, on Grindr. He said he liked spoiling people, and said he'd pay me to be intimate with him. He was a bit older and heavy-set. Not my type, but I wasn't bothered by it. I let 4 people know exactly where we were going to be at and who he was before I did it. I dressed up in a cute fit, and he complimented me, and I felt affirmed at a time when I was questioning my gender. He asked if $100 was okay, and I was only expecting half of that, so of course I said it was okay. We banged outside, and he was really sweet. We cuddled and talked more than we banged. He told me his nephew was transitioning and started living with Kevin because he was escaping his bigoted parents. Kevin asked for advice on how to make his nephew feel safe and stuff. Kevin even respected my boundaries as far as what I did and did not want. He was a really caring guy that was just lonely. After I left, I bought some outfits and sent pictures of me to him. I haven't heard anything after that. I hope he's doing okay. Story 25. I remember my first client wanted a foot J. I wasn't at all prepared for how physically exhausting it would be to use that kind of repeated movement with my legs. It was way more of a workout than I expected. I was in my early 20s at the time, and I remember the client looked surprisingly young. I wore lingerie throughout the session and gave him a foot J. When he came, he just wanted to talk for the rest of the time. He asked me a lot of questions about the job, what it was like, how I got into it. It honestly wasn't a bad experience. He was respectful, curious, and kind. Just a bit unexpected. Story 26. I was on Seeking Arrangements for a short time, and I'll admit, there were some genuinely nice men on there just looking for someone who fit their taste. I guess not sure how else to put it. But there were also some straight-up creeps. I ended up sleeping with a guy who was 30 years older than me. We had a monthly agreement where he'd pay me $2,000 USD, but it didn't last long. It just didn't work out. What really got to me were the men I met before him. Some of them made me seriously question society. They were blatantly cheating on their wives, not even trying to hide it. Some would flat out say, "You'll get this amount if you have a place I can bang you, or this amount if I have to rent a hotel." The transactional nature of it didn't bother me as much as the entitlement and the complete lack of discretion. Story 27. Honestly, it was fine. Maybe I'm in the minority here, but I got into being a sugar baby, not out of financial need or desperation, but more out of curiosity and desire. I found it hot that people were willing to pay me for something I already enjoyed doing. I'm not romantically attracted to men, but I have a good time and genuinely enjoy their company, so for me, it was easy to keep things clear and avoid any emotional messiness. My first client started during the pandemic. We actually ended up talking on the phone for months before we could even meet in person. By the time we did, I was already super comfortable with him, and I was receiving monthly support. I eventually left the scene when I started dating my girlfriend more seriously, but I have absolutely no regrets. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.